will be able to give us small talk also about shifting left and right. But without further ado, I think that we want to move on to Anssi. Anssi, are you with us?
I am here. I am here. Hello.
Oh, I miss you with the hat, man. No worries.
I
Now,
asked my
Anssi,
wife. I asked my wife, should I wear the hat, and she said no hat. So that's the
you
reason.
know what? Let's prove them wrong, man. I'm with you.
I will tell her about this. Yes.
I'm going to prove everyone wrong. People don't know that hats are always better. I'm with you, especially with our heads. In any case, Anssi, help me with your last name.
It's Lehtelä. I think you say it pretty well.
Lehtelä.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
By the way, I need to say something. I love the fact that you're from Finland. I love Finland. Whenever I get a chance, I really enjoy my visits to Helsinki. And it's been a while, but I need to find an excuse. In any case, you're going to be talking about how can we learn from failures. And I think that this is great because most of my biggest lessons actually have come from me doing something wrong. So without further ado, go ahead, take it on. You may want, by the way, you may want to share your screen because I'm still sharing mine.
Yep, I will do that. And you should see my screen now, right?
Now we're clear. In any case, go on.
All right. Thank you a lot. And hello all. Indeed, I've been working in the field of software development as a testing specialist, way of working specialist for nearly 20 years, and done a lot of fails during that time. And I was just earlier this year talking about one of those failures with a colleague who liked the story, and I kind of like telling that story. And I started thinking that could this actually be a talk if I list a few more stories. And also my kids like to watch from YouTube these fail compilations, not from testers, but general ones with this try not to laugh thing. So I welcome you to my own try not to laugh fail compilation of a tester. I'm gonna share some stories that are bad, sad, maybe funny, hopefully educational and entertaining. And I'll just move on. So first, quick credits. So the presentation template I'm using is by Slides Carnival, free to use as long as I give attribution, and the same for most of the photographs used are by Unsplash or StockSnap. And then my talk is having these different categories of quite loose categories of failures, sharing one or a couple of stories from each. First category is fun with data, a love and hate relationship that testers and software developers have with data. So first story is about relooking data. So I was working in a test team. We were working with this CRM billing system. And when working with all kinds of systems that involves customers, you are also creating a lot of test customers, and we were doing the same thing. And for some reason, we were creating test customers with specific data. It was like an inside joke that we call the name of the person was Tammisto. The place where our office was called Tammisto, and then the address was Tammisto Road, just for fun. I don't know why. And then we used to do this for a longer time, and then until our company got contacted by a person who lived at Tammistontie. It was an actual place, Tammisto Road, and asked that why are they getting so many printed invoices and other stuff attributed for somebody called Tammisto. That person does not live there. And what had happened, that stuff from our test environment had accidentally been printed and distributed with production material. And it wasn't that bad because most of it went to this one person who didn't make a big fuss out of it. But it was a good reminder that these things happen. Sometimes testing environment and production environment may get mixed up. And so not using this relooking data is a good idea. Also with emails, there are cases where you put an email that you think don't exist, but often those actually do. People are not that random. So instead of using this, you could use gibberish, just something, but that's not very useful either. So through a few lessons, what I'm these days usually doing is using something called self-verifying data. So if you have a field that is labeled first name, you enter first name, maybe with some randomness on top of that. And then later on, if you see that first name text in a place where you wouldn't expect to see first name, it's easier to spot. And the same thing with email addresses. For example, you could use your own work email address and use the plus something syntax, and then all the emails would always go to the my test, your basic email address. And this would be metadata that you can kind of know that should this email come to this address, basically, and add dates and so on. So self-verifying data, better. Lesson learned. Next story is that you're not always in control of the data that is being generated. So this story is, I was a test lead, the only tester on a project where a company was creating a new customer self-care channel, basically, that customers can log in and manage some of their own data. And it was this off-the-shelf system. So basically, it's already in use by many companies. You buy it and just configure it, add a image here and so on, and then it should be good to go. Of course, there was a bit more configuration, but pretty much like that. And one of the things that it had was the username generation already. So and the way it worked was that if your name was Anssi Lehtelä, for example, it took 3 characters from your first name, 2 from the last name, followed by an incremental number. And I didn't really think too much about this. It's already there. People are using it. It's probably good. So Huipskoots would be Huisk 001. And it went to production. And then actually the customer care got an angry call by somebody who was called Pasi. Can't remember the last name fully, but it was something like Pasi Kannisto. And they didn't appreciate their username, which was Paska 001, which is Finnish for shit. So their username was shit 001. And they didn't like it, but they didn't make that of a big deal about it. It could have been something that a paper would have printed, basically. And we kind of thought that it's, yeah, funny and sad at the same time. But we went back and we changed the username generation to be more random. Of course, it cost more to do it at that later on and so on. So it was a lesson learned still. And it can, I guess you're now thinking that could it happen in your in some other languages, and I'm pretty sure that it can happen with many. But maybe the lesson here was that even though something would work in a context, when the context changes, it might not, or the assumption that people are using this might also be wrong, and everybody has their own username generation. Anyway, lesson learned. Third is, again, generating data. This time we were in control of the data that was generated. And the story goes that I was working in a company, and it had a web interface where our company customers could log in, and nothing wrong with the username. We were using emails as username. But what was happening was that we were under a really big and pretty good phishing attack. So our users' passwords were being basically phished, and some were also given in. And so we didn't have a 2FA or a multi-factor authentication thing, and we quickly had to come up with something. So we decided to do this. So when you would log in on top of like occasionally, at least once a month, we would also prompt this code that would be sent to your email address. And then you would have to log into your email and come to the UI and enter the code. And only that way you could log in. And then we have this verification code that should like tell that the email, if the email has the same code in here, then it's sent by us. And here would be the confirmation code. And I tested this. I was a part of planning it and implementing it, and I couldn't bypass it. It sounded good. Went to production pretty quickly because we were in a rush. And then the 2 customer care people that we had started getting bombarded by customers who were not able to log in. Some were able to log in, most were, but there were a lot of people who couldn't log in. we were mystified, like, wow, what's happening? And we tried in production, it works. So what's the problem? And you might be already guessing what it was. And we couldn't. But the good thing that we were able to do quick changes to production. So we added logs. And then we started seeing what were people entering as the code. And there were two kind of problems. They were entering this code in here, which says cool logs, basically, which is kind of funny, but people could kind of misinterpret that this is a CAPTCHA or something. And they were trying this and saying it doesn't work. The other problem was that this confirmation code, when I tested, I think I always just copy pasted it. But people don't always copy paste. They come in here and they look at the code and start keying it in. And we had a lot of different characters and digits, uppercase and smaller case. We thought it's very random and hard to guess that way. But then people were mixing zeros and O's and I's and small L's and so on. And they were not able to log in because of that reason. So even if you're in a rush, a bit of user testing would be good. You could say that. And actually the third problem, this we were able to fix quickly. We were good to go. And the third problem was that there were a lot of customers, companies using this system with email addresses that there were several people behind this one email address using it just as their like username. And some of the people, the email addresses didn't even exist anymore. So they had left the company, but they were just using it like this, which they shouldn't do, but they were. And now they couldn't use the system. So our customer care was really busy with verifying this, that they are actually who they claim to be and creating new accesses. So again, a failure, lesson learned. Maybe the thing that saved us was that we were able to do these changes very quickly and spot the actual problem. And that was the first category of data. And next one is called hands in production. So what it means is that sometimes you have to go to do things in production, or you want to, for different kind of reasons, and it may sometimes prove to be a costly mistake. First story is actually the only one in the talk that I'm giving here that I was not part of, but I like this story. I was at the company where this happened, and I use it as a scare tactic, and also something that kind of teached me something. So they had this system for mass SMS sending, that they can send SMS messages to their customers, bulk notifications, maybe marketing things or something. And it had these block lists and allow lists to configure for whom it will get sent and so on. And then these two people were trying to do something. I don't know where they're testing if how the message looks or whatnot, but they ended up sending this kind of a message that said Jepu. It doesn't mean anything, so it could have been worse. And they sent this to 30,000 customers. In Finland scope, this is quite a lot. And now they were kind of getting anxious. Oh, okay, what are the customers now thinking about? Will they start calling our customer care? We need to do something. So they decided to send another message telling that we apologize for the previous message. It was a test. You can disregard it. They sent it to 30,000 other customers. So now there were 60,000 customers who were probably confused. And I don't know what happened after this. Did they decide that they made enough damage and stopped, or did they kind of go back and send 60,000 more or 30,000 more? But the learning that I got from this, also from some other cases, and I use this as an example story, that when you are even in test environment, maybe they thought they were in test environment, you should always, when you write this kind of a message that has the probability of being shown somewhere, always go with "this is a test, please disregard this," or something like that. And then you're safe, even if you make a mistake. But yeah, that wasn't my failure really. Next one is, I was happy to see that there was a talk later on today about using feature flags. So I will now tell you how not to use them, basically, or how not to configure those. So feature flags, of course, a way to tell the software to behave in a specific way based on some configuration that you can alter quickly in production and then see the difference in behavior, for example. And we were doing this a lot in a company, in a product team I was working with, and we didn't have a really nice way. It was just a database field which we would add per feature toggle. And the way we were adding those, I didn't like to go and do writes on the database using a database editor, but what I did, I would hop to a server, open a console, and start doing things. So this was what I had to do again: add a new feature flag and set it true, so that this feature would become, the new feature would be in use. And I hopped to the server, and being lazy as I often am, I just, and I knew that other people also do these same things. I just searched an old command where somebody was toggling a new feature flag, and I saw that there was one where somebody was adding a new value to an array of some sort of feature flag or other functionality. So then I started editing it, set it as true, and then I was supposed to change these softband IPs into feature F on, but by mistake I hit enter and realized that now I had overwritten whatever value was in this database for this column with value true. And I also realized that this softband IPs was actually quite important security feature. And now I was starting to panic, like, what should I do? And after all of these failures, I did one smart thing. I was sitting at the office, I looked around and I asked a couple of my colleagues that, hey, I just messed up. Can you come and help me? I don't know how they could help me, but I just wanted them to come here. And then we tried to like look for more values from the history. If there would be like a full value of this, there wasn't. But then other colleague noticed that I had this database editor open. I use it a lot. And he noticed that I also had a view open with the values of these feature flags there. And he said that if you don't refresh that, you can go and copy and then come back here and enter the value back. So very carefully I did that, and I was able to save the day. So just set back the previous one and set my flag on. And actually, even if a failure was kind of looking that it will be big, it didn't cause a lot of implications, but I wanted to tell this story because, first of all, the feeling in your stomach when you do something like this, I remember that very well. And secondly, instead of like in a panic mode, starting to by yourself, fix it, ask somebody, and they will come with calmness and have better advice, I'm sure. Okay, next time, hands in production, and we were not as lucky. So in this place, we were doing, everybody in the team had basically write access into production, and people were quite often doing updates directly to the production database. Not a good idea, but we were doing it. It was fast, it was convenient. It had been a startup not that long ago, so there were these kind of things happening. And one of my colleagues was gonna do one. So just update one table, set column values for a couple of specific customers. You might already notice here, the problem was that the person had highlighted only the update and set and forgot the where. And when they hit execute, it executed only this, which meant that all rows in that database table for that column were updated with the new value, and old data was lost. And not as lucky that time that they would have the old data somewhere handy. So what happened, we had to go and well, first of all, set this feature off for a moment, and then ask our database operators to restore this from the backups. So we made this request, continued our work. Couple of hours later, I'm doing some data analysis in the production database, and whoosh, connection failed. And first I think that, hey, did my network go off? But then my second thought was, but there was this thing that we asked them to do, get the backups. Asked my colleague that, hey, can you access database? And she said that no. We looked at production was down. So what had happened was that the database operator had dropped our database. And even making matters worse, they also dropped the backups. And our SLA of 3-hour recovery time ended up being 3 days. And it was a long 3 days, basically, getting like physical tapes and getting this database back up. And hundreds of thousands of company customers were not very happy. And why I'm telling this story, because you might be thinking that why am I sharing? It wasn't my fail, but actually it was, because I was the person who was responsible for ways of working, basically, in that company. And this way of working was unsafe. It was just accident waiting to happen. Who will do the right and who will cause this kind of course, it ended up being that bad. Who would have known? And but this kind of unsafe environment is bad. And there was another problem, because our culture wasn't blaming people at all. So even the person who made this problem, they were not blamed. We just carried on, fixed problems, and moved on. But a couple of years later, when I was talking with this person one-on-one, they said that their confidence went fully down after this. They didn't trust themselves. They were suffering like mild burnout, basically. And I realized that it's not enough to not blame somebody, but you should also somehow acknowledge that this happened and it had implications, but it's okay. And a lesson that I learned from this is that what we do in my current team is whenever there's a failure of anything basically that has some consequences, we always do a blameless postmortem where we talk about the issue, why it happened, what were the circumstances, and then the persons who kind of blame themselves also get this feeling that it has been handled and they are not blamed, and we have now the actions to get better. So it was my failure and a pretty bad one in that sense. But I have learned from this many things. Yeah, so like I said, I learned there are a lot better ways to handle feature toggles, waiting to hear about them later on today. And safe environment is very important. These days, I do not accept production credentials. And if somebody needs those, you have to have a process that it's safe to do those updates. And then it can work. Otherwise, it's an unsafe environment. Okay, next category. As a tester, I should, of course, tell a little bit about some bad bug that I missed. And I was thinking about what it could be, and it was actually kind of hard to, because there are so many. It was kind of hard to pick one or two. But I then digged a bit deeper and remembered the one that happened quite a long time ago and was a big thing. It was such a big thing that it ended up in the 2 biggest newspapers in Finland. It was a major data leak, customers' secret mobile phone numbers made public. And when I was doing these slides, I actually was first thinking that too bad that I didn't take any screenshots of those news articles at that time. Then I remembered that the internet never forgets. I Googled and I found the things, and it was a walk down the memory lane. So this kind of a problem happened, and I thought that I would tell a little bit how this happened. And it was indeed, it was like a mobile subscription, an old one, product one, that was being discontinued, and everybody who had that subscription were going to be moved to one of two new products. And there was a spec, like for product 2, there would be certain fields or data types would be configured differently, attributes, and then there was to change this one field to secret. And for product 3, it was a little bit smaller spec, removing something and adding something. And what was the problem then? It was this kind of implicit thing, because in here it was said that, hey, this field P, which is the secrecy of the mobile number, needs to be set to secret. And the implicit spec was that do not touch it here. What actually happened was that the field was changed to public. And I did not notice this, and the implication was even worse than being in the newspapers, because it took a few months before this was revealed, and it got revealed by a person telling the company that their ex-partner had found their phone number, which was supposed to be secret, and they basically were having to move away to another location because of this. Some bad history there, so it had like major implications for people as well. And when I heard of this, I couldn't believe it, that I would have missed something so obvious. And I went back to look at the test data from that time. It was still there, and I found a case, and it was there, right, glaring in my eyes. I should have noticed that easily. I was the one tester there, and I didn't, and I felt really bad. I felt really bad because this was something that should have been found, because it was easy to find, and also it had a really big impact. And felt really bad about this for quite a long time. And what was the lesson learned was maybe that actually at that time, 11 years ago, I was maybe thinking that I'm the hotshot tester who comes and saves every project and finds all the bugs and uses the magic wand of exploratory testing, and everything is great. So you could say that I had a pretty big ego, and for sure this made a difference. Like I remember that I missed this, and I can always miss stuff. These days I know that I will miss stuff, but this was like the wake-up call. But not the nicest experience, for sure. But it's 11 years ago. I'm happy to share the story now. I got over it. If you will ever have this situation, you will get over it too, and you can take something out of it also for the future. Yeah, so I kind of told what I learned. People make mistakes. It's not enough to just go and do your magic. You need to do the work as well. And if you have done the work and these things still happen, then it's better easier to cope with it. Okay, that was the one that got away. And the next category is something called project work. When working with software development as a tester or whatnot, there are many kinds of places where you end up working, and the first story is from a project that was I remember I was a consultant, like the second place I ever worked in. It was a project that was huge. It had already been ongoing for like a couple of years when I joined the project as one of the test coordinators and testers. And it was this classic big, long sequential project. So like year of planning, 3 years of development, and a year of testing, or something like that. And as these kind of projects often have, it had these quality gates in it, and as a tester, one of the quality gates was also that when the development is kind of over, there is a phase where the testing specialists test the system, and only if there are like less than X amount of critical bugs, then it can move on, basically. And so we were in this phase at the time. It was not mature at all, basically. I wouldn't even call it testing what we were doing. We were just going through features and reporting that this is not working and this is not working, and it just kept on going. The quality wasn't improving really, and people were getting frustrated. And then what happened was that the project manager or program manager had told the main test manager that we need to get on to the next phase, the UAT, user acceptance test phase, and we need to pass this quality gate. And the way we will pass it is that you will stop reporting bugs. And I don't know what the test manager had talked with the program manager, but then he came to us to say that okay, you can continue testing, but you cannot report the bugs anymore, because otherwise the project will get frozen. And we were mystified, like what is up. And the mistake I did, and I still regret to this day, is that I went along. So we said that okay, if this is what is wanted, we will stop. And then we stopped. The old bug tickets were fixed. There were no new ones. And then we moved to the next phase. And after that, again, like a lot of bugs being reported, the UAT ended up being bad. Project didn't go that well. And this is one of those situations where, which I remember that you might have this moral or ethical decision to do. And my job there was to provide information, basically. And I should have just said that I will continue my work testing, I will continue reporting, and then people, if they decide to not act on these critical issues, that's fine. But my job should have been to just continue this. And the moral thing would have been basic to say that no, we will not do this. Maybe go and talk with some managers even about it. Maybe even lose my job. But this is what I hope I would have done at the time. And I remember this. And even just for the sake of yourself, taking the high road and being able to be kind of happy with that is something that I always try to make these days. Yep. Next project experience. A couple of the previous ones were a bit dark. Hopefully this is a bit lighter. But it didn't start so light, so I was working on a project that was running late, as projects often are. These days I work usually with products only, and it's a lot more smooth. A learning also for me that I like that more. But this was a project that was running late, and I was a tester there, but I also had some other things that I was working with. And one of them, the responsibilities was to get localizations done. And what that meant was, it was again a bit of a sequential thing. There were different vendors building the product, and I was working with the customer. So I got these long lists of text to translate. I was giving those to a few people to translate them, and then when I got those back, I sent them back to the vendors. And the vendors took their time. It was like 2-3 weeks before we got the next package with the translations. So I did this. What happened was that when the package came, like 1/3 of all texts was not translated. I was like, well, this didn't go too well. And I was talking to the vendors, and then they said that, but you provided only 2/3 of the texts. And indeed I had. And what had happened was that I had provided all to the people who were responsible for translating, but they had not given all of those back to me, and I had not double checked and just sent them to the vendors for them to finish the localizations, basically. And so now I was in a situation, I was thinking like, well, yeah, it's kind of my mistake, but really the persons who did the translations, they should have like built them all. And then why didn't the vendor tell that they are missing many and just do what I gave them and leave the rest out? But I decided that maybe it was my responsibility, and I should like take the responsibility for this. And I went into the program manager's office, and it was he was a frightening man. I hadn't really talked with him. I was working as a consultant very early in my career. Didn't really know what will happen, so I knocked. He asked me in, and I said that. He asked what do you want, and I said, well, the thing is that I made a big mistake. And then he looked at me for a while and said, okay, tell me more. Then I told what I did, said that this means that there will be like a 3-week delay, maybe even more. He asked that, okay, have you now like sent all the translations? Are you sure that you have done that? Yeah, I have done this. So that is done. And he said, okay, go away. So I left the office. I wasn't sure if I will be a consultant very long for that project anymore, but I felt good. Like I was relieved. I took the blame, and it was my responsibility, and now it's there. And a couple of weeks later, there was this project meeting where this was being addressed, and when somebody heard that there's a schedule delay, that the program manager said that this has been already handled. Let's move on to the next topic. So nothing that bad, and I actually wasn't fired. And it gets better in the sense that a few months later, a person from the consulting company I was working in, a salesperson, came to the company where I was working on this assignment and wanted to sell more consultants, basically. And the program manager was the one who was basically the buyer. And he said to the sales rep that, you know, what I really need is more people like Anssi. So if you have more people like Anssi, I'm hiring. And I think this is pretty much basically based on that one short 5-minute discussion that I had with him. So on top of feeling good, honesty also paid big time in this regard as well. And maybe that's the lesson. Good that it went like that, because it's a really important thing. Be honest, be truthful, and you will always have a good conscience, and life is a lot easier that way. Also applies outside work, maybe especially outside work. Yeah, so I learned from the first project, the big sequential project, I used to tell that it was a good learning experience. So if I want to make a good project, I would just do everything the opposite of what was done in that project, and it will probably be quite well. So, and the next one was, of course, this honesty pasting. And that was the last category I had. A couple of final words just to sum it up. Firstly, one of my favorite movies is the Christopher Nolan's Batman, and there's this quote, "Why do we fall?" And it is that we learn to get up. So everybody makes mistakes. It's not nice to do those. You make more, you kind of get accustomed to it, and if you can turn it into a learning experience, those might be the best things that you kind of actually remember from your career, and at least things that teach you the most. And part of this is also that I've been thinking that seniority, there are different definitions on what does it mean to be senior on something, and I think it's a lot about experiences, and also about these bad experiences of failing, getting some humility out of it, learning how to avoid these, and how to spot errors, and how to handle those when those always anyway happen. And the third is that I really suggest that you start collecting and maybe even create your own fail compilation, because it was kind of funny when I said in the beginning that I thought that might I have enough fails for one talk, then I started writing those down, and it became a long list. And the next couple of weeks, when I had this thought in my mind, all the time I was just noticing that, oh yeah, that thing I also failed with. And even with my current work, I was noticing, hey, this was again a nice failure. Should I talk about this? So it kind of made me again think a bit more about failures and how I have also learned to handle with those. So that was kind of fun. So I suggest you do. I can give you the slide template. You can use the same topic if you want to present your own fail compilation. I would love to hear it. And that's all from me. I will stop share maybe.
I think you can leave it there if you want. I think it was a great session. I was laughing with some of them. I'm nodding my head on some others, I guess, because some of the failures you had are very close to the ones that I had. But I think that more importantly is about the lessons learned. I think that it was very clear from what you were saying that one of the biggest lessons is that you have to own your failure, meaning that mistake, and basically come forward earlier rather than later, because it's not going to go away. Most of the time it's not going to go away, and by doing that, then you're basically first of all showing that you care, and second of all trying to solve it earlier. So first, it was a great session. Let's start with that. There are a couple of Q&A questions here. Some of them were asked earlier on, some of them here, but let's see if we can actually go over them. So Jacob is asking, what are you using for phone numbers? Is there some kind of validation if you don't want anyone to get SMS or calls? So I guess it's more of a tip around how you can get around that SMS issue or some of those.
Yeah, well, if going back to the first story for customer, you could use your own. Then there are often a case that you cannot use the same phone number because it's validated and so on. And then you need to get a bit clever. But you shouldn't use a random number that is like probabilities nobody has this number, because somebody will have it. And a lot of test environments have things that make it quite easy for SMSs to go out, emails to go out, and even prints can go out. So I don't have a good answer to that, but definitely think about it and don't go with something random, because it's probably a real number.
By the way, something that I heard people doing, and I think that we do it once ourselves, is basically to have everyone in the office making a database. Okay, so if you send to people internally, no one will care. People will know what's happening here. So maybe you can start by if you have, I don't know, 20 peers, 30 peers, 40 peers in the office, then you may want to start with that. Just as an idea.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And then when they would get this strange message, they would know who to contact and say that there might be a little problem with your system now.
Yeah, worst comes to worst, they'll tell you, hey, I got it, or something like that.
Yeah.
Question here by David. Have you ever accidentally used the refund functionality on your own account details? Okay, I think that we can actually leave that on the site and take it later. There's a comment here by Breach, and I agree with him 100%. He said that he obviously enjoyed the session, but you should never be scared of failure as long as you can learn and be honest about it. And I really like this.
Yeah, but that is a lesson to learn as well. So and I guess it's for some people it's easier, and for some people it's not as easy. And I'm not saying that it's always easy. It wasn't easy for me, and I think that with time you kind of realize that failure is part of life, and you just do it all the time. And then when you can turn it into this, the earlier you can, the better. But for sure. That's true.
But there are definitely also some environments. Meaning, I know of companies where completely against anything that it's logical. If you fail, you're gonna get something. I mean, people will do something to you. You might lose your job or stuff like that. And my answer there is you don't want to work on those places anyways.
Exactly. Get away from those environments. It will not do anything good for you. So this like safe environment. Of course, that is a privileged advice in the sense that not everybody can make this kind of a thing. But if you can, try to get away. If you can't, try to change the environment, at least in the way you behave. And
internally, and I like the part about working with your own truth. There is a question here, not sure if you have the answer for that, but it's a nice question anyways. Nikita is asking if you study failures from other people in software development, and what would be a good source of information for that?
I love like these failure stories. Maybe that's one reason why I'm telling my own, that other people would tell also, and I could hear more. And that's actually, I might like answer that in the Slack. I could drop a few things, a few books, a few resources, and definitely like there are failures all around the world not related to software development, and they often have like similar type of patterns, so you can read those. Unfortunately, it's not as easy to learn from other people's mistakes as from your own. For some reason, there needs to be maybe some investment, and then you need to feel a bit of the pain maybe, and then you learn it more. But yeah, I could drop something to the Slack channel. So,
and I think it comes from the "it will never happen to me" syndrome, where people think that, oh, come on, I'm not going to make that mistake, I'm not going to be that distracted. But we're all human, so I'm with you. I'll be more than happy if you want to do a share compilations of mistakes. I'll share mine. I'm pretty sure that some of them will be